Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? The Raiders got embarrassed by the Browns, and because of that, the biggest news wasn't really, well, a little bit about it was about the O-line and how many times Geno Smith got sacked, but after the game, Chip Kelly was let go. We're going to break it all down and much more.
Good morning, Raider Nation. Q and I are sitting in Q Studios. We're going to talk about this Raider loss, how disappointing it is, and how it seems to be a heightened level of miscommunication when it comes to executing plays out there on the football field. Yes, Chip Kelly is let go, but he might not be the only one.
Yes, exactly. Two coordinators in a 17-day span. Tom McMahon, the special teams coordinator, and now Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator. Could more accountability be on the way? That plus more on today's Raider Squad Show.
Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? Remember, if you like the content and you're watching this on YouTube, remember to like that like button, smash that, also hit that subscribe button. And remember, if you are on the audio side listening to this, leave a rate and review. Give us a 5-star, because why wouldn't you? Linc and Q are on the show. Lots to get into. Before we get into what is on the docket today and everything that we're going to talk about, obviously, you probably know a few things that we're going to talk about, but today's episode is brought to you by and sponsored by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. In the final segment, Q and Linc are going to be taking some of your questions and comments, so get them in the chat right now. If you are watching this on YouTube, we'll take that final segment to answer and take some of your comments. We're also going to be talking about Geno's mindset, because allegedly he was throwing up the finger to some of the fans post-game. We'll talk a little bit about that and the frustration of Geno Smith right now that he's probably having. And we are going to be breaking down in full the Raiders and the Browns, but I thought that's the first thing that we talk about, but bigger news developed after the game. Chip Kelly was fired by the Raiders, and, not too much of a surprise, in my opinion, after the Raiders lost to the Browns 24-10. Of course, Shadur Sanders got his first win. He didn't ball out, but he got his first victory, and the Raiders were embarrassed again on national television. And Pete Carroll and the Raiders actually put out a statement, and I quickly want to read it before getting Linc and Q's thoughts on everything. And it says, quote, "I spoke with Chip Kelly earlier this evening and informed him of his release as offensive coordinator of the Raiders. I would like to thank Chip for his service and wish him all the best in the future." From Pete Carroll. When you hear that quote and what transpired after the game, Linc, your thoughts?
At first, I thought he was untouchable, because what I had heard was that Pete Carroll didn't actually hire Chip Kelly. There was other people in the organization that hired him. And so even though Mark Davis hired Pete Carroll, there was a disconnect there. And I had heard grumblings that they didn't really communicate in the building and stuff like that. I couldn't confirm or deny that. But the thing is that there was a level of disconnect there. You have what Chip Kelly was touted as a messiah, if you will, when it comes to offensive coordinating. And his welcome back to the league, everybody, including myself, was amped about the possibilities of being creative. But into the season, you're the third worst team in the league. That can happen. And even if you tell me that you don't have your personnel, well, wait a minute. You got hired, early enough to where you should be able to get the players that you want or that you need, or have the influence into that, or that's the part of the disconnect that was there. Don't tell me you don't have the players in order to be successful, when I see the plays that you're calling aren't going to be successful if you expose your tackles, for example, and open ends and have open rushers against Myles Garrett. I don't care. And they did a decent job of trying to find him. But when he was isolated one-on-one, he was the wrecking terror that we know him to be, especially when you're trying to hold on to the football. So that's that level of disconnect and execution that can't happen. And I said earlier, there might be more firings to go, but I think Pete Carroll had to do something. It's something after this. This was an embarrassing loss to not a very good team. And I no slight against Shador or whatever. He didn't play all that well, so I wasn't all that impressed. He had 2 plays. One was a screen, and the other one was a broken play. So I can't really give him a lot of credit. But with that defense and that score, all the headlines are going to go to Shador. That's just a part of it. Once again, the Raiders are at the losing end of something with somebody's quarterback, whether they're old, should be over the hill, that type of thing, or brand new. Once again, the Raiders lose, and he loses in an embarrassing fashion.
You know, the thing about it is, following the game, I went downstairs and was ready to get into the locker room, and I was talking to a bunch of different media members, and I said, well, look, if accountability is something that you're preaching, which Pete Carroll has preached since he's been the Raiders head coach, something has to give. And I don't know where it is. And to Lincoln's point, I didn't know if Chip Kelly was untouchable. I didn't know if he, was going to be the next fall guy. I didn't know if Brendan Carroll was going to be a guy that they were going to look at. And, I say it all the time. I wouldn't want to have to fire my son, so I wouldn't put myself in that situation. But that's the situation that they're in, right? Brendan Carroll's the offensive line coach. You just gave up 10 sacks. You've given up 20 sacks in the last 3 games. And I won't say that all of them are on the offensive line. Lincoln knows that there's many different ways for a sack to happen, and it could be on the quarterback, it could be on the offensive line, combination of the two, bad play call, busted play, whatever the case is. But 20 sacks is 20 sacks, and that's what they've given up. So if there was going to be some sense of accountability, something had to give. I just didn't know if it was going to be Chip and if it was going to be right away, if it was going to happen a little bit later. Obviously, like Lincoln said, something had to give, something had to happen, and they just made the decision to move on from Chip Kelly. Yeah,
that was just a brutal game to watch, I think. And here's the thing. I actually thought Chip was untouchable too until like the end of the season. I thought if anyone was going to be let go first, I thought it may have been Brendan Carroll, just because the O-line has been absolutely horrendous. I was a little bit surprised that it was Chip. And then at one point I thought maybe they'd make, PG the fall guy, but the defense played well. But then they also gave up 24 points to a rookie quarterback. And this is a really bad Browns team. And they made the Browns actually look good. But I'm happy that it wasn't PG, because I think from anyone from the staff, I feel like he's the guy that should probably stay. And this is the thing that I want to ask you guys. Do you see Brendan Carroll being let go sometime before the season? Because it kind of doesn't make sense to me why Chip went before him. Link?
Again, he's the coach's son. I mean, look, I'm not one who wants to mix business with family.
That part.
Okay. I'm not,
Yep.
and trust me, with my restaurants and I don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same point, at this position, something's got to happen. And I'm not that fire guy. I've never been that you got to fire these guys, because look, I don't want to get into coaching because I don't want to live with my bags packed, but also because of reasons like this and controls it like this. The coaches coach, players play. The fact that the players are out there not doing well, sometimes they're in the wrong position, that does have something to do with coaching. But at the same point, it also has to do with execution. There were 3 starters on this offensive line that probably wouldn't start another team in the league if it wasn't due to injuries. So, you're dealing with that. And look, it has not proved beneficial in any way. They can't run block. They can't pass block. It's a pain to watch this offensive line. So like I said, many things are going to happen. I'm not that fire guy. I'm not going to say anybody deserves to lose their job, but there's something to be said when your son works in the same office as you. And I don't know how hard that makes to make that hard decision. This offensive line has poor communication, poor execution, and they cannot play well together.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that if Pete Carroll's going to want to keep his job, I mean, let's just keep it a buck. If he's going to want to keep his job, he's going to probably have to make a tough decision. There's going to come a time, and I don't know if Chip Kelly firing has made it all the way till now the end of the season when these tough conversations are had, but I'm sure that there's going to have these conversations like, hey, man, this is not acceptable. I'll say, though, to take it to the next level, I mean, where did this all start? It all started at the top. It all started at the decision to not upgrade the offensive line. It all started when we're in Indianapolis at the scouting combine and the GM and the head coach say, yeah, we like the offensive line. Okay. Well, it got better at the end of the season.
But you still drafted 2 guys.
You still drafted 2 guys that
you haven't played,
that you feel like are not good enough to get on the field. And you're telling me that a top 100 pick is not okay enough to even, dress in the Cowboy game and get on the field yesterday when a guy goes down. Instead, you put Alex Kappa in at the center position. Alex Kappa has not played center. He told us in the locker room afterwards he has not played center since his rookie year preseason. So not a regular game, like AI would say. No, we're not talking about the game. We're talking about practice. Right, he has not actually played center until, except for the preseason, his rookie year, and all of a sudden now he's in there. And you told me all season long that Meredith was the best option at the center position, and so whatever it is that Caleb Rogers has done or hasn't done, he can't get on the field even for a couple snaps. Even though the young man was up there backpedaling, he was doing his warm ups, he was getting ready to get into the game, and was very visibly upset when he couldn't even get back into the game. The guy that you just benched, Will Putnam, you decided to put back in when Meredith gets injured.
And look, Pete Carroll is not. I mean, we know that he's loyal. We see that. We see that with Geno Smith. The Boo Birds came out very early yesterday. And look, I'm telling you, I've had my fair share of games when the Boo Birds come out and like, yeah, I'm walking the sideline. Yeah, we stink. But there's just a level in the body language when I'm watching guys. There was no sense of urgency. Right now, there's not too much of a sense of pride. And you can just see that when guys are going out changing series, you usually see guys run out. These guys just walk out, struttle out, and then come out of the huddle all nonchalantly like their stuff don't stink. And then they get their asses handed to them, by opposing defense. They could not stop the defense of Cleveland Browns. And what the Cleveland Browns did was, in many ways, very elementary as far as blitz pickup, but you still have people always around Geno Smith. I saw the frustration on his face. Look, he came back to the press conference last night after the game, took all the responsibility. I need to get better, said all of the things that you expect a good quarterback to say. But there is a level of disconnect right there because he is not gelling with this team. They're not on the same page. And more importantly, Geno's been under distress all year. I feel for the guy. And I'm 55 years old. I want to go out there and lay my body on the line for him because I'd like to get him a little bit of protection. But you saw it. You saw it, Q. You saw it, Chantel. There was no protection yesterday. At all. Absolutely at all. There was nothing that you could do. So if you were in anywhere from 3rd down 5 on, there's no hope of you getting this first down.
Yep. Yeah.
A lot of times they started with penalties. Penalties.
Yes.
And there was a penalty in the first half. There was a penalty every series. Yep. That pushed this offense back. They can't rebound from that. Yeah. They can't respond from that. We know that. So, it was bad. It was really, really bad.
2nd and long, 3rd and long, they're not overcoming that. They're just not. And this is how the play calling went. It went 3-yard gain, 3-yard loss, sack.
Yep.
It was like a hip hop track, right? I mean, like you got to get the beat line, right? 3-yard gain, 3-yard loss, sack. Right? Yeah. You can put together some bars with that because that's exactly what it was. It was like rinse and repeat as I'm tweeting out, live tweeting the game. That's all I kept saying. 3-yard gain, 3-yard loss, sack, another one, right? It just felt like DJ Khaled was in the booth with us. Another one. It was ridiculous. But, I mean, again, it goes back to the offensive line. So one of my big questions, Link, that I had was I don't even know how to evaluate the offense because I don't even see the offense getting going, right? I mean, you can't run certain plays. You can't run the ball. You can't throw the ball. What can you do when you have no protection?
Well, that's just it. I mean, you have to fix the problem at the core. Yep. You have to find a way to generate something out of this offensive line. And I know 3 of the guys are replacements and one probably be starters elsewhere. But, much to Q's point, when Rodgers is warming up after Meredith goes down to go on the field, they pulled him off. And we saw that. And it's like, what? And I'm scratching my head like, you drafted the man in the 3rd round. You've spent a high pick
top
for him,
100 pick,
and you're not playing him. And then Pete Carroll says, "I'm trying to put the best people on the field." So then that leads me to believe that you don't believe in your draft choices,
right?
That you had. It's not like you got them from another team. You made these draft choices, and these are guys that you brought in that wanted to help the team. So why aren't they playing? And especially when the Boo Birds come out. If I'm Aiden O'Connell, Kenny Pickett, I don't want to go on that football field. You want me to get him as much behind that offensive line? Hell no.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I see more and more things, and this is a big thing to me because this is big in body language. I don't see a lot of offensive linemen picking up Geno Smith when he's down. And the reason why I say that is because we had a measure of pride in the offensive line room. We don't leave one of our guys on the ground too long. Even if it wasn't your man that hit him. Quarterback goes down, you go over to pick him up, help him up. Give him a helping hand. Look, man, we got you. Show your support. I don't know what that translates into in the locker room. I'm not saying that there's a level of disconnect between Geno and the players. I'm just saying from this body language with this record, this is what you're going to get. And it's probably going to get worse. I can't get any worse than losing to the Browns the way they did, but with the remaining schedule, the remaining 6 games, going to the Chargers this week, this is going to be nice. This is not going to be nice.
Yeah, I think the Caleb Rogers story is probably the most interesting story, right? Because Putnam looked terrible. And then they put Alex Kappa in at the center position. Yep. And it's like, I don't even think he's taken a snap at the center position, like for an extremely long time. I don't even know when he's ever taken a snap.
I'll tell you, his rookie year, preseason. That was when.
So not even in a regular season game. Yeah, not even in a regular season game.
The other thing is that he told us in the locker room was that he's been working on it in practice. So that means that the coaching staff has seen this coming. And that was actually a conscious effort to say, hey, we're going to put him in at the center position. Like, that's going to be our next move. So, to me, it just seems like a whole lot of disconnect going on.
Yeah, and I feel for a guy like Caleb Rogers, who, when Ashton Genty scored his touchdown, he was one of the first guys to come up to him. Like, he seems like he's frustrated, not able to get into the game, and everyone's wondering why. Because here's my question, Link. After 10 sacks, would you not just make the change and let the young guy play? Like,
I think you send the wrong message to your quarterback if you make a change like that and he hasn't been practicing with them. Because the thing is, you got to make your quarterback feel comfortable with some capacity. He's got to be able to survey down the field. And because there were times where, Geno was just taking an immediate check down or trying to get rid of the ball because he knew he didn't have much time, that's a product of what's happened throughout this season. He knows he cannot survey down the field. Even when he tries to set up, there's somebody that hits him from the backside, strip sack, fumble, that type of thing. So he doesn't have the confidence. I don't feel that he has overall confidence in his guys up front. I just don't see it. I see him looking more down at the rush than he is in that. And for the guys up front, they just couldn't get it done. And I don't have a magic wand to be able to tell you, oh, just do this, it'll work. To your point, if you send the message by sending in a rookie offensive lineman who hasn't played, who you've already made a concerted effort to avoid, even when he's suited up with injury and everything else, I don't know what type of message that sends to your quarterback. Are we giving up?
I mean, at some point, maybe the quarterback needs to be sat down too.
That's true too.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they could have made wholesale changes. Maybe at some point after, I don't know, sack 7 or so, maybe it's like, hey, maybe make a move to Kenny, because Aiden was the emergency quarterback, right. So he wasn't even a guy that was really available unless they had to, get forced into having him in this quarterback position. I don't know. Like, I'll be the first to tell you, I don't have the answers to these questions. This is a frustrating team to watch. I know that it's frustrating for Raider Nation. That's why you heard the boos. The team deserved the boos. I'm not mad at the fan base for expressing their feelings, because they do a lot to support this team. They're there at the torch. Me and Lincoln know we're at the torch, and they're there. They're fired up. They're early. They're excited. They're watching the pregame show. They're yelling and screaming this and that. Every time that there's a call to, hey, get loud, the fans get loud regardless what the product is, and they're still not getting rewarded. So when they're booing because the product is bad, I can't say that I blame them at all.
If at this particular point with the remaining games, if there's changes to be made, they need to be changes across the board, which means you need to play everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Play everybody, put them out there, make a change at quarterback, and play everyone, all the extras, all the rookies, all the players that you need to evaluate, because you need to use these next 6 games to evaluate what you have. And that'll be a telltale sign for as far as your evaluation the possibilities, because you tell me right now that your draft choices are only playing sparing moments. That's something. When you spend an entire draft class and you really don't see many of them. And you're becoming more than obvious. Chip Kelly was more than obvious with his play calling. He was trying to get the ball to Brock Bowers. He was trying to get the ball to Ashton Genty. And I've seen that over the last couple of weeks, especially with some people like us that said, well, why aren't they getting the ball to him? And Geno Smith has been trying to do that. Exactly. And at times he's almost trying to force the ball into places because he's trying to get it to his playmakers. But yesterday was an absolute disaster. They couldn't pick up games. They couldn't pick up stunts on the front line. They had absolutely no time. The pocket was crowding around them, and they had no answer, minus the play for Myles Garrett.
Right.
It wasn't just him.
Right. Defensive
tackles rained havoc. The outside linebackers. I mean, there were a couple times where Cleveland guys would line up 5 defensive linemen out there daring the Raiders to pass, because they knew if they isolate these offensive linemen one-on-one, they're going to have trouble stopping. And it was like going through a hot knife going through butter. It was just easy. It just opened up, and there was nothing the Raiders could do.
Yeah, I guess my final question to both of you on this whole Chip Kelly era, I guess, even though it was very, very short-lived.
11 games.
I wish I had that paycheck for 11 games.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, he was getting a big bag, so you got to perform. You have to win in the NFL. Everyone really has a short leash if you think about it, because in the NFL, you have to win and you have to produce. For Chip Kelly, though, because the O-line was so brutal, after I was sitting down and thinking, do you think we even really, really got to see what Chip Kelly could have done with this offense? Because without a solid O-line, you're not really able to put the quarterback in a good position. You're not putting your running back in a good position. The offense isn't in a good position when the O-line is struggling like that. So, Q, do you think that we even really got to see a Chip Kelly offense with what was on the field?
No, I mean, I really don't. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier. Like, I don't really know how to get a proper evaluation of the offense because I don't think it ever stood a chance. I don't think that the way that Ashton is playing, I don't think that that's how Ashton's going to be playing. Brock Bowers hasn't even been the Brock Bowers as he was last year, and I know injury had a little bit to do with that. Geno Smith, for everything that was said about him when the Raiders traded for him, he hasn't shown anybody anything. Right, to the point that he just looks like the New York Jets version of Geno Smith as opposed to the Seattle Seahawks version of Geno Smith. So, no, I mean, I went into the season thinking the Raiders offense was going to be the strength of their team and that the defense was going to have to catch up. Boy, was I wrong, right? I mean, it definitely was not, and it hasn't been. And so, the whatever disconnect there was between Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly, and we've been talking about it for a long time, that it didn't feel like they were on the same page. I don't think that you ever really truly saw what the offense could have looked like, but it all starts up front. And again, that's a problem with the team. They evaluated, they made that judgment and decision that offensive line, when fully healthy, was a good offensive line and they can go out there and execute, and clearly they can't.
I'm a firm believer that coaches coach and players play. And with that statement, if you notice that your team, as a coach, if you notice that your team is struggling to do anything, you have to create or find a system to where they can do better and not regress.
Mm-hmm.
What we saw yesterday in a lot of people's mind was defined as the worst offensive performance in Raider history. And, I'm going back to I went back to the day when we had 10 sacks. I was on the team when 10 sacks when we went to Kansas City, Jeff George. And I remember, that going into the game, we said, we're not going to do 7-step drops because we knew what Derek Thomas was. Had a field day. Chiefs sacked us 10 times. I was on that game. I remember that game. We got embarrassed that game too. I think that was a game we lost, so we were blown out. But the fact is that coaches have to create a system that's more conducive to what you have. And they tried, for most part, they tried to do things different. I saw screens, I saw draws, but there was so much penetration to begin with. You're supposed to allow penetrators on the screen. You're supposed to drift back and do it. They were ready for the screens. They were looking for the screens. They were literally playing up on the line of scrimmage because they said, you know what, I know you can't throw it deep. And the 2 times or 3 times that they tried to go deep, there was a miscommunication with Trey Tucker. Geno Smith is throwing off of his foot because he knows he's going to get hit, his back foot, and he's throwing it to the spot. Trey hasn't even turned around and looked for the ball a couple of those times. You see what I'm saying? And so there was that. You got to strike when you got to connect that pass to the first one they missed early on. But as we said, with the penalties, that's not out of the coach's control. That's players. The penalty, they had a penalty on every series. They started behind. They're not built like that, and there's nothing they can do. So I don't know if we really got a chance to see Chip Kelly do his stuff. I just know that because you're paid this much money, you got to do something to be better than the 3rd worst offense in the league.
Yeah, and it hasn't officially been announced, but I'm guessing Greg Olsen will be the interim offensive coordinator. But coming up on the next segment on the other side, Raider Nation, Linc and Q are going to be breaking down the game between the Raiders and the Browns because we still have to do that. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're listening or watching the Raider Squad Show. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement on this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including Cali, Texas, and Georgia. The thing I love about PrizePicks is that there's also a bunch of promotions that usually come in, during the week. You can get a 40% payout boost usually on Fridays, or even getting a couple of free bonus bets as well. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you're watching this on YouTube and you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. You'll see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, the ways you can connect with us also in the description below. And, we have to obviously break down what we saw on Sunday. And this was, I guess, the camel that broke the straw's back. right? The straw that broke the camel's back. That's what it is.
That's a big camel.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
I do that all the time. I mess up sayings all the time. I'm so glad you're part of the mess up the saying club like I am. I do it all the time, and I get people so mad at me. They're like, Q, it's this. And I'm like, all right, hey, my bad.
Well, I'm gonna use that knife and butter one that Link said the other day. I'm like, just a couple of minutes ago. Okay, so as bad as that analogy was that I just said, the Raiders' play on the field was absolutely brutal. And the interesting part was I took a look at the stats, and usually I always look at the first thing I look at is time of possession, because that will usually tell me everything I need to know.
Right.
But time of possession, the Raiders had more of a possession than the Browns did. The Raiders had the ball for 36 minutes and the Browns had it for 23 minutes, just over 23 minutes. And even in terms of the yards, total yards, the Raiders had 268, the Browns had 270, but the penalties were huge. The Raiders had 13 penalties for 196 yards. That really messed up the flow of the game. Anytime there's that many penalties, that's going to mess up any type of momentum you even build. But just in terms of takeaways from this game, we'll start off with you first, Link. What was your biggest takeaway from Sunday?
It was sloppy. Game was sloppy. I mean, and these were errors that could have been corrected. I mean, I thought the Jamal Lewis penalty, roughing, personal foul penalty was atrocious. But Pete Carroll said it. This crew is a flag heavy crew, and if anything, you address it as a head coach to your team. Like, look, let's be smart out there, because these guys like to throw a lot of flags. You don't necessarily need to put it in team speech, but your team needs to know that, and they should know that. And this crew was flag happy. They were penalizing everything, but there were still things that's inexcusable to me. Jumping off sides when you're home, inexcusable. You know, you got, and Cleveland's offense was equally as bad, but they just had those big plays. And I go back to the Wildcat. I still am perplexed by the Wildcat. How hard? And I asked many defensive guys, do you think that guy's going to pass when he's back there? You know, the fact when you're running a Wildcat, you should know as a defense, okay, you're going to have to pass to beat me. I'm going to stop the run. The Raiders couldn't stop that. So as well as the Raiders defense was, whether it was special teams, whether it was turnovers, being put in that position where they had to stop them or gave up some big plays and they couldn't just respond to that, the offense wasn't doing its part. So much to your argument about time of possession, offense couldn't sustain drives out there either. And when they did, ends up with a missed field goal, or it ends up with a broken play, or you end up getting close and getting a sack and getting out of it. I mean, it was hard. It was painful to watch.
It really was. It was some bad offense, right? And I mean, just the Raiders defense kept it close. I mean, the game was still close late in the second half. But we all knew that, once Cleveland got up 14-0, I thought to myself, I don't know if the Raiders offense could generate 14 points. I really did, and you saw there was times when Geno did have an open guy and had an opportunity to hit him. He misfired for one reason or the other. And a lot of it is because he's rattled in the pocket. He's shook in the pocket. He's anticipating the hit before the hit gets there now. Right. I mean, and that'll be the product of when you get sacked 10 times. Look, I mean, not to mention those penalty yards, and then you add on the 77 yards that they lost on those on the sack yardage. I mean, that's a whole lot of going backwards. Right. So again, it goes back to what I was saying about 3-yard gain, 3-yard loss, sack. I mean, that's just kind of what the story of the game was. And I mean, to me, it was one of those where I was like, if the defense don't score, there ain't no way the Raiders are going to win this game. I literally thought the defense was going to have to score to be able to get into the end zone. And finally they got a late, kind of garbage time touchdown. But man, it was painful to watch. That's for sure.
I mean, how excited were we for the Charles Snowden interception?
Right.
Because they were really the most positive offensive yards the Raiders got the ball. I mean, it's like, off of that interception, I'm like, oh, score, please. Please. And it fell apart. And again, much to Q's point, when the Raiders got down 14, I'm just like, oh, the game's over. I mean, they just don't have the ability to score. They couldn't even stay on the football field. And I'm surprised that they won or were even close with the yardage game. But
they ran a lot of snaps too. Where they have like 75 offensive plays.
Exactly.
Crazy.
Right? Nothing to show for it.
Nothing to show.
I'd be like, hey, I got the ball for a long time. I've ran a lot of plays, but I ain't done nothing with it.
And you keep in line with everyone else from all these recent losses have done. The defense is playing it very close to the line because they know you can't go beyond 10 yards. There's nothing you can do. So there were times where the receivers had no separation because they're playing tight man coverage. We don't feel threatened by you.
Right.
There were times they didn't even have a safety in the hole, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, I would be salivating as an offense if I don't have a safety in the hole with the speed that the Raiders possess. You're not going to be able to hang with me, but you don't have enough time. And if you don't address the offensive line, as I've been saying all the while, you're not going to be good. This offensive line has been tattered and beaten down. No JPJ, no Colton Miller, two of their best players. They're literally, in my opinion, playing with three backups on their starting offensive line. And I don't think they start anywhere else. DJ continues to struggle with speed rushes, and you're not helping him because yesterday you're trying to pay attention to where number 95 is. So now you're getting it from both ways, and even max protection. If you have max protection, where you're keeping 8 in, you're only sending 2 or 3 out. You're not going to be able to get anything open because the defense is just going to sit back and double what you do send out or what you do send eligible. So then you're left with checkdowns. Can't start with the backed up. The second down at 13, drive's over.
Yep.
And then you see that. You've seen that all this season in this offense.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you guys. When they went up, by 14, I was like, it's a wrap. But here's the thing. I think just seeing the offense do something in terms of being a little bit successful, but it was hard to do when the O-line was just so brutal. They weren't able to do anything. The Ashton Genty touchdown, everybody was happy to see that. But it's kind of sad that that's what we were happy to see, because there's nothing really else to cheer about in this game because everything was so brutal. In terms of the defense, though, because they can only hold an offense for so long if they're on the field for a very long time. They're going to get tired. What were your guys' thoughts about the defense? Because, there was some footage that came out with, a little bit of frustration on the sideline from some of the players, Q.
I mean, that's going to happen, right? I mean, these guys are going to, beef with each other on the sideline. I mean, they're just trying to win. These guys are the ultimate competitors. And, we've seen the video of Landon Roberts and Max Crosby, getting into it. But those are two alphas, right? And I expected. They're frustrated. I mean, I was in the locker room. I heard the frustration from Devin White. I've heard the locker room sound where these guys are, they're just trying to figure it out. And now they're looking at each other. When you're 2-9, and Lincoln could tell you this better than I can, but when you're 2-9, you start looking at the next guy like, hey, are you doing everything you're supposed to be doing? And then fingers start getting pointed. That's what happens at this part of the season, and it sucks. Because I do know from being around the guys as much as I am that locker room, they're all together with each other. But, man, it's hard. It's really hard when, the defense, Jeremy Chin comes up with a great play, right? Chin knocks out the ball, and then E-Rob gets the recovery. They get the ball back, and they're not able to do anything with it. Snowden, interception, not able to do anything with it. Like, when's the last time the Raiders won the turnover battle?
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yes.
And they lost. It wasn't even close. I mean, so frustrations are going to boil over when you see alphas out there and they're not succeeding like they want to succeed.
When Max Crosby said we got to stop doing the same thing and expecting different results in a couple of weeks ago, and of course you saw the frustration on the sideline. I get it. I really do. I understand how he feels, because when you're going out there and you're playing hard, I mean, Max Crosby and the tackles have lost what he was trying to do as an individual. He's only one guy.
Right.
And, they are going to commit. Everyone that we play the Raiders are going to commit resources to keeping him out, keeping him away, much like we were trying to commit resources to keep Myles Garrett out. And he still had a big game. So these things are going to happen. But both of these guys, both Myles Garrett and Max Crosby, are playing on not good teams. There's only so much that they can do. And there's only so much the defense can do. There's only so long a defense can hold up. If the offense doesn't hold up its part of the bargain and score and get some points to make things close, they could have forced this to be a one-dimensional game very early. If they did, if they besides the big plays, if you put Shedeur Sanders in that situation, he was going to fail. We saw with him scrambling around and trying to commit, he was not very good, even though he got his first win. He was not very good. But they couldn't make it one-dimensional because they couldn't take the runaway. And that was something that we thought the Raiders defense was going to be particularly better at, because we've seen them this year play the run particularly well. I was surprised Cleveland didn't run the football more. I was surprised when they were backing up trying to throw the football. I'm like, wait a minute.
Right.
They
only ran for like 60-something yards.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, and it was a surprise, especially with those two running backs, how they were trying to free him up. So I would have much rather that would have been put on Shedeur Sanders' shoulders to have to beat us if you take away that other part. But it was the big plays were the difference in the game, and the fact that the Raiders couldn't score.
Yeah, in terms of rushing, the Cleveland Browns had 64 yards to the Raiders 60. So not much of a difference. These are two really bad offenses. Both offenses are really bad. The only difference in this game was that the Cleveland Browns D-line was absolutely beating up the Raiders O-line. That was the big difference in this one when it came down to defense. So in terms of, I think you could honestly say, and I was like thinking about it, I feel like this team could be worse than the 2006 team. I don't remember watching games being that painful.
I think it's funny that you said that. I said that at halftime, standing in line trying to get some food. I said, this is that 2006 offense where the defense had to score. If the defense didn't score, they weren't scoring. Right. And I hated that sitting in the stands in 2006 and sitting there in the Coliseum watching those teams, knowing that a big interception would happen. The ball would get down to the 3-4 yard line and they have to settle for 3. Right. I mean, that's what this felt like. This felt like that offense. And again, it goes all the way back full circle. Chip Kelly getting fired. Right. He's the engineer of the offense. There's got to be some kind of accountability that, is taken. And so that was the first move that they make. But like I said, there could be a time when, powers that be come say, hey, look, okay, everyone needs to be held accountable. What's going on here? Because this was your guys' child. Right. This is John Spytek, Pete Carroll, Brendan Carroll, Patrick Graham. This is all your guys is putting together, and this is the product that you put out there on the field, and it's not acceptable. So what is going to be done? How are they going to get this thing turned around? And unfortunately, how are they going to get this thing turned around is the same question that we've all been asking the Raiders for how many years now. And
that's usually when you have a team that's struggling, the first thing is going to do, there's going to be finger pointing in the locker room. You're going to start looking around and trying to make sense of what's going on and where you are. But most importantly, you're wondering if you really want to be here in the future. I mean, if I'm a player in this locker room, I'm wondering if I really want to be here. Because I want to do like a Devontae Adams and go somewhere else? Now he's on one of the best teams in the league playing for the Rams after he quit on the Raiders. But I mean, do you want to do that? Or can you bring the same amount of energy that Max Crosby brings or other guys like that? Because we've seen flashes of greatness out of the players that we have. Just hasn't been the level of inconsistency. To me, it stems back to the inability of the offensive line to do basic things. But I see execution issues. One of those sacks yesterday was a misplay. Yep. Ashton Genty in I think it was one of the blocking tight ends was going to the left. Geno Smith turns to the right like he's supposed to toss it to the right. And there was a pull and tackle. So I don't know where the play was supposed to go. But guys, I'm here to tell you, it's not that hard. Football's not that hard of a game. In any system I've ever played on, even to the right, even numbers to the right, odd numbers to the left. So if it's 28 toss, that's going to the right. Why is my quarterback and an offensive lineman going to the right and everyone else is going to the left? What the hell is that in a professional game? Did you not get the audible? Did you not get the call? Geno Smith did not have enough freedom to make audibles. There were plays I was looking at from the side. Oh, get out of it. Get out. Oh, they ran right into it.
Right.
Why? And it was disastrous. They couldn't pick up blitzes, simple blitzes, Mike dogs and safety blitzes that you're supposed to assign for in your blocking assignments. And you saw Ashton Genty step up and try to take on blocks and stuff like that. Then you have a special teams breakdown. You get a turnover, you drive, and you miss a field goal. What?
Yeah.
There's supposed to be some surety with our special teams. And that's not the case.
They've been so bad. And, it's funny. Everyone will point to Carlson or, AJ Cole had the punt. That was big return, and he ended up getting called for the penalty for tripping.
It was touchdown saving penalty.
Yeah, he saved the touchdown. But if you watch the snaps have been so bad. The snaps have been high all season long. And watching that Cowboys and Eagles game and seeing Trent Sieg make a big play recovering a fumble, oh man, wish of the days of Trent Sieg, right? The Pro Bowl long snapper. Nobody cares about the long snapper until you have a bad one, and the Raiders haven't had a good one all year long. So if you go back and look at even the 48-yarder that Carlson missed on Sunday, go back and look at the snap. Go back and look at the ball when it gets there to AJ Cole. They've all been high all year long.
Yeah, and the first one to go was Tom McMahon. Now it's Chip Kelly. But here's the thing. I think there has to be some accountability that's taken. I don't think there's one person to blame. I think you could blame a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the issue here. This team is pretty bad from top to bottom. And I don't think anybody thought it was going to be this bad, though. And so that's the big surprise here. I think coming into the season, a lot of people were a little bit excited in terms of Chip Kelly being the offensive coordinator, in terms of, Geno, the Raiders finally having a quarterback that also had an arm. That just hasn't happened this season where we've seen it to the Raiders with them having some success with everyone that they brought in. So I think it's a disappointing season, not only for everyone in the organization, but for the fans as well. But you mentioned Geno Smith. We're going to talk a little bit more about him on the other side. So Raider Nation, keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between login screens and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price that you pay. And that's what's really great about Gametime is you can also see your seat view as well. So wherever you buy your tickets, you can also see how it looks as well. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Gametime app today.
Call from.
Hey, you got to figure out how to get someone up in the condo, right? So that's how it usually happens. But we're gonna let that one ring for a little bit. All right, guys. So that's live. That's a live show.
That's right. That's life. That's life. We got you.
That is hilarious.
No harm, no foul.
Yeah. All right, guys. So remember, Raider Nation, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also, in the final segment, where we've got some great questions and comments that I've actually started to read off in that final segment. So if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to drop some questions and comments in the chat for Q and Link. We got to talk a little bit about Geno's mindset. And you guys have talked about this periodically throughout the season in terms of him not really having confidence in his O-line. And you can kind of see him looking at the defense when he drops back. So he's not totally focused, but in terms of all the hits that he's been taking, that can add up throughout the season and your confidence can definitely drop. And I feel like Geno's confidence has dropped because even in terms of his throws yesterday, where was the accuracy? The accuracy wasn't there. That's what we talk about Geno a lot, right? He's an accurate quarterback. That wasn't the case yesterday. A lot of overthrown balls, and he just did not look comfortable. And of course, when you're not getting any protection by an O-line, you're not going to be comfortable. Just your thoughts. Link, you're already rubbing your forehead there.
He's under constant duress. How can you possibly feel comfortable? I mean, how could you feel sure to make the throws even when you know where the receiver is going and anticipate him probably coming open? How are you supposed to do that when you don't have the time or you feel that you're going to be hit? Even when Geno was at his most comfortable in the pocket at times, when he thought he had a clean pocket, there was somebody who was eventually going to come around and make the sack. Whether it was Myles Garrett or somebody else was going to circle back around because he had no way to go with the football. The way that people were playing, there wasn't a whole lot of separation with the receivers. And that goes back to your receiver core. Receiver core has to do their job. Not only offensive line has to do their job, but even when they did do the job and had a clean pocket, receivers weren't able to get open, weren't able to create that separation. So he's forced to try to, fit balls into tight windows. Who could possibly feel comfortable about that? The biggest telltale sign for me was after they scored the touchdown, how Pete Carroll was excited to try to run over to Geno, and he just kind of, kind of give him a move by, hey, yeah, whatever, that type of thing. That shows a lot. Mm-hmm. That shows a lot about body language. That tells me a lot about your attitude. That tells me a lot of the amount of frustration. Geno Smith was picking himself up off the ground a whole hell of a lot yesterday, whether it was registered as a sack or a hurry who had that, and he threw the ball at 44 attempts. So, I would be frustrated too. I don't even know if I could play. I don't even know how I would want to sit out there as a quarterback. And I've never played quarterback or sit out there in a position to make the decisions, try to get everybody to fire it up and stuff like that. And still have to come into the press conference and say, you know what? I got to get better. We got to do better. I just got to try harder. I got to do this, this, and this, and this. And it has not translated into wins or success for moving the football.
No, it hasn't. It's been really bad. And again, we've been talking about Geno and his lack of confidence or whatever's been going on, him playing guarded, rattled, shook, whatever kind of cute word you want to add to it. I mean, that's just what it's been for a while. And again, it's been this the way that this season has gone. I mean, he just hasn't had any protection, and he doesn't believe in the guys up front. He doesn't trust them. And I don't know how much the players around him trust him. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. It does not seem like the players are all on the same page, even with Geno Smith. Like, to Lincoln's credit, when the offensive line is not running back to pick you up, there's a problem there, right? There's something going on, and you start to see that when the offensive line and the quarterback don't necessarily see eye to eye. And so there's so many different issues going on with this team. Just overall, it's just a bad product, unfortunately. It's just what's going on with the Raiders. I don't know, to be honest with you. right now, I'd be shocked if I saw Geno Smith back next year. I really would be shocked. I think that there's going to be a bunch of wholesale changes, and I think that there has to be, right? I mean, I don't think that this Raiders team would be confident in seeing Geno Smith return next year as a starting quarterback. I don't know who would be confident with what they've seen this year saying, yeah, that's cool. Go ahead and run that back. Now, again, that's obviously not my decision. That's just my opinion. That's not anything that I've heard. But in this day and age, when they've got an $18.5 million dead hit, if he's not back, that's nothing. $18.5 million is not that much anymore, right? Back in the day, it'd be like, oh, it's too much money. You got to keep that guy. But after Denver got rid of Russell Wilson for $95 million, everything's on the table. $18.5 million is nothing if you just know that you made a mistake. Again, just my personal opinion, I'd be shocked to see him back next year.
High priority has to be a franchise quarterback and a franchise tackle.
Facts.
And whether you address it in the draft or free agency, and I don't know what type of quarterbacks are roaming around there, but if you look at the teams that have had success this season, most notably the Bears, and in the NFC North, Bears turned their season around. Last year when they drafted Caleb Williams and then all that offensive prowess, they were a disaster because they could not protect. Caleb was literally running around for his life. They went out and addressed the offensive line through free agency in the draft. Look at them. They're top of the division. Same thing with New England Patriots. Same thing could be said about, Philadelphia Eagles, where they continue to be and stuff like that. I know they lost yesterday, but if you do not pay attention to this offensive line in a big way, not just, address it with a player here in a big way. This is a major overhaul. There is going to be some issues. And you also have to decide what your future is with JPJ. Because the fans are divided with him. And I had many conversations where I thought his proper position is, and I've often said that I want his tenacity at guard rather than at center, because when he's at center, he makes too many mistakes with the football. And I need the football to get back there. That's the most important thing. I can put him at guard, and he can be just as effective, in my opinion, my evaluation of JPJ. But the reliability is his ability to be on the field. If he's injured, whether it's concussion or anything else, that does me no good. And I don't know if I can rely on that going forward. But this offensive line needs a major overhaul, and it needs to be addressed. You're not going to. I don't care who you have back there. It's not going to be able to perform if you don't do that. Teams that have learned from the year before came out the following season. The Kansas City Chiefs, after they went to the Super Bowl and got embarrassed because they couldn't protect Patrick Mahomes. What they do? They went out and they addressed it. They drafted. They went to free agency. They spent money. The Raiders have the ability. It's just whether or not who's going to evaluate and who's going to make the proper calls for the right guys to get in there. They haven't even played the guys they have now that they've drafted, which it scratched my head. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. How much worse could it be than what we see right now? So if they're for the final 6 games, if there are going to be any changes, it have to be everyone across the board. New quarterback, new offensive line, as much as you could possibly do. You have to see what you have. If your evaluating is going to work, you got to see what you have, because if you can't rely on the guys that you drafted this year, if it was a wasted draft for whatever reason, you got to move on. Life goes on. We can't sit still and wait for them.
No, they've got plenty of free agency money. They got salary cap space for next year. So whether you have to go out there and sign a couple offensive linemen in free agency, you have to draft a couple more. To Lincoln's point, you have to have a complete overhaul. Colton Miller is your best skilled offensive lineman. JPJ is your toughest offensive lineman. And everyone else is a question. Everyone else is a question. I don't even think DJ Glaze's best position is tackle. He might actually be a better guard. But
in this system.
Right. Exactly. And you don't know until you actually get some of the guys out there. And I'll say this when it comes to the offensive line. I would love to see them go back to a power blocking scheme more than the zone blocking scheme. I know that every offensive line does both. I get it, but it just never has seemed to work for the Raiders. Never has. I've never been a fan of it.
It's really interesting because I remember the beginning of the season, one of the things that Linc said was better hope that O-line stays healthy. They were not able to stay healthy throughout the season because we already knew there was no depth behind that starting 5. And even if one of those guys got injured, it was going to be rough. That's what kind of happened for the Raiders this season. Going back to Geno Smith, and obviously we talked about him ad nauseum, but it's hard not to when he is the quarterback. I don't believe he'll be here next year as well, next season, but you never know in terms of what quarterback they're going to try to bring in, right? Because in the draft, I think they have to address the O-line first and then draft a quarterback, to be honest with you.
Unless there's one of those franchise quarterbacks, and you guys have done more college evaluation.
Well, hey, look,
I don't think there is.
Dante Moore's back on the table. Dante Moore is available because I kept saying Dante Moore is not going to be a guy because he has a bad relationship with the former OC of the Raiders, going back to UCLA. But hey, Dante Moore is back available now.
Yeah, and
that's just it. If there's a quarterback that makes your eyes glisten, whatever, you have to take
Go get them. Go
get them. And
yeah.
if I'm Geno Smith, I don't know if I want to come back, to be honest with you, with this product.
Yeah.
To be honest,
that's a good point. And the other point is, and I'll say this, and I'm sure it won't go over well, and I don't know because we haven't talked to Geno. I know that apparently Adam Hill put out a statement from the RJ about Geno Smith flipping off the fans, and I did see the video. If he was, in fact, flipping off the home fans, he should sit next game. He shouldn't play next game. Just my opinion. I know that's probably, that's soft, whatever. That's disrespectful to the folks that are supporting you. And are blood, sweat, and tears for you. You can't run off the field. I don't care if you're getting booed. Did you see that product? You're going to get booed. Flipping off the home fans, I don't think he should play next game. If that in fact is what he.
And
was
what
doing.
I heard, the guy's a Twitter troll, right? He's one of these guys that
I know there's plenty of those.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
I catch those guys all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time that I heard unanimously the Bulls come out.
Yeah,
and they were loud. And I was like, ooh, this is not a good look. This is not a good look for a struggling team because, as I said, I've been on teams and we played like snap. We played like shit. Excuse my language. We played bad, and we went out there and we deserved the boos. No one's above the boo. You got to earn the respect. Right. So no one's above the boo.
Yeah, and I agree with Q. I think if Geno did flip the fence, I saw the video. It was kind of hard to see because it was a little bit blurry. So I was like,
that's why I can't make a full judgment. But I saw the video too.
Yeah, and so I was like, he allegedly flipped off of the fans. But if he did, I don't think he should be starting next game either. But I've said for a little while that maybe they should make a little bit of a change because I think Geno is so frustrated. The O-line is frustrated. The team is frustrated with the product that's been out on the field and how they've been performing. So maybe they need a little bit of a change. But anyone behind this O-line is going to have the same issues as Geno is having. And so, even if they do make that change, it's going to be tough for whatever quarterback is under center. Any final thoughts before we move on to questions with Linc and Q on the other side, just in terms of how much confidence you still have left in this team to end off the season on a good note? Q?
I don't have a lot. To be honest,
what would be a good note?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence in this team. I mean, at this stage of the game, I feel like they're just trying to get to the finish line, right? And that sucks. And that sucks for guys that I know, like Max Crosby, that are giving it their all. Even guys like Devin White. Again, I mean, I'm going through even this morning, listening to all the sound from the Raiders locker room that we collected last night, and it's just like you could hear it in their voice. And Devin White said, "Hey, we're going to see who wants it." Right? It's one thing, because people say, "Well, you guys are still playing hard." He's like, "Yeah, my son's 5. He plays hard. I want to win." Right? I want to win. We've got to do this for 4 quarters. We've got to do better even on the defensive side of the ball. And then they've got to do their job on the offensive side of the ball. So you can hear the frustrations boiling over. And like Devin White said, we're going to see who wants it, who's going to continue to play, start to finish, go strong, go hard, hold themselves accountable. And he said, we'll see. And that's to me, I hate that that's where we are at this stage of the game. It's not even Thanksgiving yet, but it's what it is.
When you're out of the contention by Thanksgiving, my mind was drifting elsewhere.
Yep.
Thinking about winter vacation. Can I get a cheap ticket to Jamaica? Should I buy it now? That type of thing.
Go to Jamaica, man. Go to Jamaica, man.
Especially when you look at the remaining opponents.
Oh my gosh,
how ugly this can get! It got ugly against a very, very poor Cleveland Brown team. What's it going to be like in the Chargers? You still got the Chiefs. You got the Broncos again.
Eagles.
Hell, the Eagles. You got the Giants. Hell, who were playing almost.
They took Detroit to overtime.
What does that tell you when this offense can't move the ball? And that's why I say go back. You play everybody. I'm clearing my bench. I'm lining them up. I'm playing everybody that I drafted. I want to see what you can do. What could be worse? And it'll be interesting to see what system, who calls the plays, whether it's Greg Olsen or some, going forward. But you really can't change up that much this deep in the season. Right. So you have to go for what you know. And with that being said, there's move Geno under the center, quarterback, whoever it is, move them under center, put your tight ends out there, your 12 personnel, run your plays as much as you can. That's all you can do. The plays that these guys know well, but they gotta squash the level of disconnect where the communication is poor. These guys got to know. And I'm of the mindset right now, because in elementary, when we played this, we had to go up to the line and point to who we have. Who you got? I want to know that and go across the board. And I know you don't want to do that in the game because these guys are professional or smart at that, but that's the least what you need to be doing in practice. Hey, before we get down to say, tell me who you got. I want everybody to point to their responsibility, because I don't see it. I don't see the execution on the field. I see guys missing blocks. I see guys running by color. old age rule. You never pass up color. Even if it's not your responsibility, you never pass up color. I see guys running by color. I'll just let him go. What the hell? What are you doing? Or going the wrong way. So that level of disconnect and miscommunication has got to go. That's got to be first and foremost, has to be satisfied. And you got to find a way to keep guys in it. And I'm telling you, from the body language I saw, more guys have already checked out.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's a little bit scary. How many guys have checked out at this point of the season? And at the same time, you ask Link, like, what's on a good note? I think playing the young guys, letting the young guys get some burn, letting a guy like Caleb Rogers play, letting a guy like Grant play. Like, I think that would be ending off the season on a good note, because at this point, everything that has transpired has been absolutely terrible to watch.
Right.
And like I said, again, I felt like I was back in 2006. And I think this team is worse than 2006. I think this might be one of the worst Raider teams I've ever seen, which is extremely unfortunate because there's talent on this team.
Yep.
And that, I think that's the biggest issue. And I think if the O-line was addressed in the offseason, the Raiders could have had a different season.
It's easily the worst Raiders team that has been here in Las Vegas. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's obviously been a small history, but look, they won 4 games last year. I don't see another win.
Right.
I don't see another win on the schedule coming up. I really don't. This is a really bad team, and this is so much not what I expected. I did not expect a Pete Carroll team to be sitting there at 2-9.
Agreed.
I did not expect the Pete Carroll team to have fired 2 coordinators in 17 days. I did not expect the Chip Kelly ran offense to be worse than the 18 points per game that they were averaging last year. I did not expect Geno Smith to be leading the league in interceptions. I did not expect Ashton Genty to be ineffective his rookie year because he has no blockers in front. Like, none of this is expected, right? This was all like, wait, hold on, where is this coming from? And now it's such a big snowball, you can't stop it. Right? All you could do is try to get out of the way. That's it. And then because it's going to catch you. And man, 2-9, and you still got the remaining games and the remaining schedule against some tough opponents. Good luck.
Yeah, that's the only thing that you can say pretty much. But Raider Nation, if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to this, you can always drop some comments in the chat. We might get to it on another episode. But coming up on the final segment, Link and Q are going to be answering some of your questions and comments. So drop them in the chat right now. We'll see you on the other side after we take a quick break. Welcome back, Raider Nation. If you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. We also want to thank you so much for making Locked On Raiders or the Squad Show your first listen of the day. The Locked On Network is also the #1 sports podcasting network, so we do appreciate you. Let's get to some questions and comments from Raider Nation. We'll go to Alpha Mega Forever 757. These scapegoat decisions are ridiculous. Pete Carroll is to blame for all of this. The game has surpassed him, and he needs to step down as head coach or be fired by Mark Davis. Any of you guys, what do you guys think about that comment?
I don't believe that, because I believe a head coach should be a manager. And a manager cannot always control his employees in the way they want to. All right. So that's the reason why you see these firings. But I also believe that you can't have so much turnover that you put us back behind square one. If you bring in all these new people, they're going to want their guys. They're going to want that support their philosophy. And then we repeat this cycle all over again. There's no consistency right now in this team. And there's been no identity created on the offensive side of the ball. It's been a disaster from start to where we are right now. The only strong point that we have is this defense. Special teams has even come into question. Mm-hmm. That doesn't necessarily, I know the head coach will get the blame for it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that was Pete Carroll's fault, because he let the offense coordinator go. He let the special teams coach go. It's all he can do to try to hold things together. He's always been about putting the best team out there in the football field. It's just unfortunate that this best team is not very good.
Right. And the other biggest problem that we have here is that we all don't know who's ultimately calling the shots at the end of the day. Right. And I feel like that Pete Carroll firing Chip Kelly was almost like trying to take the team back.
Yeah.
Right. Because we started off the whole show talking about we didn't know if Chip Kelly was untouchable. Well, why would he be untouchable? You know, the only reason he'd be untouchable is if he wasn't necessarily Pete Carroll's guy. Like, I can walk around the building and say, Lincoln can't fire me. Because the guy who hired me has more power than him, right? I mean, that's the only way someone feels that way. So who's calling the shots? That's where the bigger problem is. Is there a disconnect? And I think there is, between the GM, the head coach, the former OC. Are they all not on the same page? And I don't feel like they are. I feel like they all have a rope tied around their waist, and they all say on 3 they run a different direction. Guess where that's going to get them? Nowhere. right? And that's where this team is right now. They're all going in the wrong direction. It just doesn't work.
You know what? I also thought it was kind of weird that SpyTech didn't let go of Chip Kelly, that it came from Pete Carroll, because I'm always wondering who's making those decisions.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest question. We'll end off with this because I think this one's interesting. Casanova Court Club says Charles Grant is a tackle. If Colton Miller isn't playing the next game, you only put him in at left tackle. Would you guys agree with that?
I mean, I'd put him in at some tackle spot, either left or right. I mean, if I'm going to play him, I think that he's probably, I would say that Caleb Rogers, in my opinion, is more, he's probably more likely to play than Charles Grant. I don't think that they're going to go to Charles Grant anytime soon. Look, Stone Forsythe hasn't been as bad as everyone thought he was going to be.
He struggled yesterday, obviously, with a future Hall of Famer.
Right.
There's no doubt about it.
Everybody struggled yesterday. But, I mean, DJ Glaze, for some reason, he's the one guy that doesn't really get talked about too much about his issues, but he struggled all year long.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, I think that if anyone, if you're going to play any offensive lineman that's a rookie, I'd probably play Caleb Rogers first.
And here's the thing. The way that you can help get offensive linemen to today's game, put them at guard. Even if they're a tackle, put them at guard. Play inside, you're protected because you got guys on both sides, so there's less space that you have to deal with. Put them at guard. We have a tendency to leave our tackles exposed a lot of times and hope that they can just stand up to protection. And I understand there are plays that call for people to escape out and get out and routes and stuff like that, especially when teams are playing man coverage. You got to do rub routes and crossing routes and all other stuff. So you need people running out there. But sometimes our tackles struggle with speed. And that exposure has turned into a collapsed pocket too. So play the young guys. If you're unsure about them at their natural position, put them at guard.
Yeah, and Raider Nation, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to this, you can always drop comments in the chat later on, and make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. Thanks so much, Raider Nation, for making this the best support group that you can have for football, because I think that's what this is at this point. We appreciate you rocking out with us this morning, and we'll be back later in the week. Thanks so much.